And so the Classic Vehicle Parade is already underway with the first run down the runway, and we're paying particular tribute here to the Jensen mark. Several different types of Jensens with us today, the oldest dating from 1959, the newest from 1975. And this is of course a mark that enjoyed great success with many high-profile owners. They're being led round by the April 1959 vintage Jensen 541R of Danny and Heather Bristow. This is a model that was launched at the 1959 London Motor Show at Earl's Court. The first car to have both disc brakes and seatbelt fitted as standard 4-litre 6-cylinder Austin engine in the 541R, R standing for the fact that it has rack and pinion steering. So that's followed along by the CV8 Mark II of Zach Marshall with a Chrysler V8 engine. 500 of those were built. April 1964 that car dates for, and it has 330 horsepower, an incredible output for the mid-60s. A Mark III version of the CV8 follows that, courtesy of Stephen Zaccaroli, that one dating from October 1966. Stephen's owned it for 40 years and completed many trips to Europe in what is very definitely a grand tourer, with a 2,000-mile trip for him this year, culminating in his 35th attendance of the Le Mans 24 Hours. Fourth in the parade is a very famous type of Jensen, the four-wheel drive FF, which was the first four-wheel drive production car with anti-lock braking. A real pioneer of four-wheel drive on road cars, 14 years before the famous Audi Quattro first appeared, launched at the 1966 Earl's Court Motor Show, and the first 30 or so of them were assembled by the famous Italian coach builders Vignale in Turin. Martin Ritchie, the owner of the FF, which is number 4 in the parade. Perhaps given the purchase price, it's not surprising that they weren't a little more successful commercially. They were eventually made in West Bromwich, and when they were new they cost twice the price of an average house in West Bromwich. Number 5 is an Interceptor Mark II of Durand Hottam from April 1970. Again, the Interceptor initially built by Vignale in Italy before production was transferred to the Castle Bromwich plant. And following on from that, number 6 is the Jensen-Healey of Adam Fisher, an April 1973 model. This was an attempt by Jensen in collaboration with the Healey firm to market a two-seater of mass appeal for the sports car market. The Austin Healey 3000 had gone out of production. It was launched at the 1972 Geneva Motor Show. The hope was that it would attract a significant number of overseas sales, particularly in the US, but the oil crisis of 1973 and other factors intervened, affecting the whole of the Jensen range, but particularly scuppering the hopes that had existed for the success of the Jensen-Healey. We've got a Jensen SP then from Richard and Jenny Fisher, dating from May 1973. Steve and Sarah Payne are with us with their Interceptor Mark III. That car actually lived here at RAF Abingdon with its owner, who was in the RAF for many years. As I say, we will see them coming round again, but following on from the Jensens, which I'll carry on talking to you about in a little while, a range of old and new models of the mighty Ford Mustang.
Get out my way.
The name, of course, that resonates down the years as far as big American muscle cars are concerned. Example, turns off the main runway. Here come the Jensens once again for their second circuit. Beginning with Danny and Heather Bristow with their April 1959 vintage 541R. There's a bit of an aviation connection with the 541R because one of them was used as the road transport element for an entry in the 1959 London to Paris air race celebrating the 50th anniversary of Blériot's cross-channel flight, entered by the future Brands Hatch Circuit Supremo John Webb. And in fact, that very car has been restored into the colour scheme it wore to take part in that 1959 Blériot race. That's not with us today, but Danny and Heather Bristow representing the 541R line with their example, which heads the Jensens on their second circuit. There's Zach Marshall's CV8 Mark II, followed by Stephen Zaccaroli's much-travelled CV8 Mark III. And then we're on to the four-wheel drive FF of Martin Ritchie. The four-wheel drive perhaps coming in a little handy on the rather damp grass today. Number 5, the Interceptor Mark II of Durand Houghton. And then that red Jensen-Healey of Adam Fisher. Lotus engine in the Jensen-Healey. In fact, Jensen ended up taking on quite a lot of the development work for that engine on behalf of Colin Chapman and his colleagues at Lotus, and all the warranty work went the way of Jensen rather than the Norfolk manufacturer. Richard and Jenny Fisher there with their Jensen SP following that, and then Steve and Sarah Payne's Mark III Interceptor. That's the one that used to live here at Abingdon. Another Interceptor Mark III follows that, courtesy of its owners Brian and Joan Raper. They've run the car for a good number of years in the UK and abroad, and you can see it's different to the others because it's got a Webasto sunroof, not a factory-fitted accessory, but installed many years ago by a recommended supplier. Number 10, another Jensen-Healey, the blue one, Dave and Jan Devine, very well known within the Jensen Car Club, one of some 10,500 Jensen-Healeys built, most of them 80% odd in left-hand drive form. Mick Liston then with his Interceptor Mark III, then Alex and Joe Carlisle in the, I suppose you say it's cream Jensen-Healey, which has just returned from its trip to southern Germany, along with several of the other cars on show here today. Number 13 is Sean Winfield with his Interceptor Mark III, and then the Jensen GT bringing up the rear, Chris and Vivienne Reed, the last type of vehicle produced by Jensen Motors. That one actually built while the company was in administration. Just 509 of those were produced. Again, most of them for export. 5-speed Getrag gearbox, and of course the main distinguishing feature is the roof. Even had air conditioning as an option. Again, not bad for the mid-1970s. Not as sporty a car as the Jensen-Healey from which it's derived, but a very nice machine nonetheless. And that concludes the Jensen Owners Club parade, going past you, after which we've got all of the Mustangs and the Pontiac Trans Am. As I mentioned, many famous owners had Jensens in their time, the likes of golfer Tony Jacklin, boxer Henry Cooper, and entertainers and musicians aplenty, such as Cliff Richard, Eric Morecambe, John Bonham, Jimi Hendrix. Even former Cabinet Minister Lord Carrington was a Jensen owner.